This book, Cradle to Cradle, is one of my favorite books about environmentalism. It's about remaking the way we make things.
This book comes up a lot with a lot of the people we talk about. And the idea is that instead of cradle to grave, it's cradle to cradle. So, for instance, my BlackBerry here, I'll probably have it for a year, maybe 2 years before it either breaks or the technology gets outmoded or I want a new technology, and this phone will be thrown away. I could recycle this. There are places that are like that, but really it's not being reused. Like the BlackBerry company doesn't want this phone back and isn't going to reuse the parts to make a new phone, which is what they should be doing. And that's what Willem McDonough is saying in this book, Cradle to Cradle, is that I should be able to have this phone when I'm done with it or when they update the technology, I give it back.
A lot of people feel like you have to sacrifice to be more green. Like, well, you shouldn't even have a BlackBerry because it's bad for the environment. But, you should be able to have technological things, but they should be able to be processed in a smart way. So technological things like that should stay in this technological cycle. So that piece of technology will never get thrown away. It will never get thrown in a dump. It will always stay in one cycle. And everything that's natural, like food and, things like that, stay in a biological cycle that gets composted and broken down.
These things have to be built smarter.
Right. And companies have to take responsibility for the materials that they're using and taking those materials back to reuse them.
I think a lot of us have this feeling like we're on the end of a conveyor belt and there's just stuff coming at us. And a lot of the stuff we need or we like to have, but the problem is that it just keeps coming. The duty is on us to figure out how to reuse it or how to recycle it. And it's not done by the people who are originating this conveyor belt of stuff. They aren't worrying about where their stuff goes and what happens to it. We have to get the people who are producing this stuff to take responsibility for the things that they make. So computers would be a big thing. A lot of us in computers we're buying new monitors, we're buying new hard drives and computers every single year or every couple of years just because the processing power gets faster. And all we can do is maybe take it somewhere and they might send it to China so the stuff gets crushed or, people take out some of the parts and the rest gets thrown into a dump. And,
and so it should be that, Dell and Apple should actually be taking responsibility and taking those things back and breaking them down into new computers.
And, and the whole idea is that business should be happy about this, or they should be smarter, and then they'll get all these products back that then they can reuse, and hopefully it would be cheaper.
Right.
And that's only, though, if they were to design it that way.
Right.
They would design it to where it would have a life beyond the one time that I have it.
Right, like cars. I mean, cars are not built to be broken down into individual pieces. They're made up of hundreds of thousands of pieces, yet, most of it gets trashed, 25 years down the road. The computer industry and the car industry are both built on planned obsolescence. That's how they make their money. Like if a car company made a car that lasted you your entire life, they probably wouldn't make as many cars and they probably wouldn't make as much money. So it's that planned obsolescence that kind of keeps you in that loop forever and ever.
Business isn't bad. Making money isn't necessarily bad.
Right.
It's just we all need to be smarter and we all have to work together. Right. So, I want to buy stuff that I know I don't have to deal with throwing it away or feel bad that I'm going to throw this thing away and it's just going to take up space in a stupid landfill.
Or it's going to get shipped to China and all that petroleum that's used to ship over there.
It's a book like this, Cradle to Cradle, that it kind of becomes a touchstone that, companies and people, that they have these vague notions, but something like this everyone can point to and say, it's like this.
Right.
And these kind of things are good. They crystallize our thoughts and the things we want, and it helps push conversation further.
Right.
Now, being a skeptical person, William McDonough seems to work on a lot of very big projects, kind of like fancy, rich projects. So it will be someone that's building, a multi-million-dollar home with like fancy electronic gadgets where the windows are opening automatically.
That's one of the things that's kind of hard is like William McDonough in the book, he talks about the Ford factory. They like helped green one of the headquarters of Ford, which is cool. But at the same time, it's like Ford still makes like gas-guzzling SUVs that are really bad for the environment. Right. So it's like, it's great to hear those concepts from someone like William McDonough, and you're like, awesome, I'm so glad people are talking about this, and then you're like, okay.
So it's always like, I think, a balance right now where you want to support companies that are trying to do it better, but I think there's always needs to be a healthy skepticism with companies with, how far are they really willing to go?
Right.
Are they just trying to green wash what they're doing, or are they really trying to make like substantial change to their processes where we can just like not like make so much waste?
We definitely recommend the book Cradle to Cradle if you haven't read it yet. It has some really interesting ideas in it. My arm is tired.